Isaiah chapter 5. So, let me read a couple of verses here. We'll start there.
Where are we at again? I'm sorry.
Isaiah 5.
Okay.
Okay. So, I'm going to read, I'll read. Let me just read the first verse. Okay. Jim, don't answer. You know the answer. All right. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it, cleared it of stones, planted it with choice vines, and built a watchtower in the midst of it. Does that sound like any other place or places in Scripture to you? Craig knows the answer.
Yes.
Where?
The book that begins with V by Solomon.
Book?
Which is that I'm still drinking coffee.
Song of Solomon, is that what you're saying?
Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes?
I was thinking Ecclesiastes.
No.
But yeah, Song of Solomon.
No. Song of Solomon.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot like Song of Solomon. Let me go ahead and read. Some of this doesn't sound like Song of Solomon. Let me go ahead and read through, I don't know. Let me read through verse 7. Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. So Isaiah finally spills the beans here, as if we didn't know already. But the vineyard is the house of Israel. And basically that's the symbolism of the vineyard, and it both in Old Testament and New, although we could go ahead and apply it then to the church in the New Testament, the Israel of God. But so the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold an outcry. Let's go back to verse 1. Let me sing for my beloved my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. This phrase, my beloved, particularly in that last line there, is so used so much in the Song of Solomon. The Hebrew word is dodi, if you want in English to be something like D-O-D-I, my beloved. And it's just all over the place in Song of Solomon. English makes it hard on you sometime in the Song of Solomon to know who's speaking, because sometimes they translate my beloved, the man, the woman talking to the man. Sometimes my beloved, the man talking to the woman. But in Hebrew, it's a lot clearer. Those are separate words. And in fact, even in Spanish Bible, they make it easy on you, because my beloved, mi amado, is always the woman's talking to the man. My friend, amiga mia, the man's always talking to the woman. So you can understand it. And
Because it is gendered nouns?
The nouns,
they use different words.
I would say, you mean in Hebrew, you mean? Or
Well, Spanish has...
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yes. Yes, that would be masculine and feminine in terms of the nouns. Yes, correct.
But did they use different words?
But they use different...
Amiga and
they use different
among?
words, yeah. My friend, they call it in Spanish, is the woman. You know, it's always my friend, and my beloved is always the one I'm talking to, man. So you can understand it. Sometimes in English it makes it hard on you because of, well, whatever our English problems are, to really see it. However, this word here, my beloved, really, it really stood out to me because, I know that this is just, the Song of Solomon is just on every page. It just goes on and on and on with that. So, my beloved comes in here again, as in the Song of Solomon. And so, let me read one other thing here. This Solomonic literature would have been available, let's say, to Isaiah, because the song was written in about 1000 BC, and let's say Isaiah around 700 BC, so it would have been available to him. It seems to me that that's what's happening here. Also, the type of the vineyard is just used in the Old Testament and the New. Just so much,
And New Testament too.
Yes. Yes. So let's look at Song of Solomon, chapter 8, beginning at verse 11. For the beloved and his vineyard. Yes. Yes, Song of Solomon, chapter 8, beginning at verse 11. Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Hamon. He let out his vineyard to keepers. Each one was to bring for its fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. The woman says, my vineyard, my very own, is before me. You, O Solomon, may have the 1,000, and the keepers of the fruit 200. O you who dwell in the gardens with companions listening for your voice, let me hear it. Make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices. So this is, as I understand it, the woman speaking here about Solomon's vineyard. And Solomon has a vineyard at Baal Hamon. You cannot imagine how much time I have spent on the internet trying to find out where this place is located. And I have been frustrated in every attempt because no one really knows. There's a place over in Carthage where it seems they worshiped this Baal Hamon. But Carthage is a long way away from Solomon's kingdom. It's over in Tunisia, Yes, North Africa. So no, it doesn't say. And then they say, well, it could be here, and this and that. Okay, nobody knows. So it very.
Baal,
yes. Well, that's the name. So.
Do you know what Haman?
I do. And we're just about to get there.
It doesn't mean ham.
No, it doesn't mean ham. As David said, Baal's a false god, but it does mean Lord. So it'd be a Canaanite name for Lord. And the Israelites had gotten so eaten up with the surrounding culture in the book of Hosea, you can see it, that the women were addressing their husband as Baali, Baal with an I after it, which means my Lord. But it's not Hebrew, it's Canaanite language. So Canaanite language had infected the Hebrew. All languages borrow from each other, but symbolically, Israel was having a problem. And Hosea, or God says through Hosea, one day is coming when I'm going to clean your speech up. You're going to have pure speech. You won't use this Baali stuff anymore. But today's not the day. When I preach it, I say one day God's going to clean my speech up too, and I'm going to have perfect speech. But today's not that day. Yes.
Well, it's not just Baal is not just any pagan god; it's the fertility god.
Okay.
Well, that's significant because Song of Solomon is using the fertility of the land all throughout the poem, and that's what this is about too. It's the song of the vineyard.
It's production.
It's production. It's
production.
It's, the land being cultivated by heaven, just like the female is cultivated by the masculine. The symbolism is all throughout.
Yeah, it's production and reproduction. Exactly.
It's a very particular pagan god being used for a particular
Okay.
family here.
Very good.
Haman is my Lord.
No, Baal is Lord.
Oh,
B-double-A, Baal is Lord, and Hamon means multitude.
okay.
So Solomon had a vineyard, and he is, guess what? The Lord of a multitude. If we want to do symbolism here, if Solomon represents Christ, then yeah, I mean, well, he is Lord of a multitude. I mean, we're not the only Christians left in Dodge, you know. I mean, there's some other ones out there. Although we may not believe it, but there are some other ones out there.
Love covers a multitude.
Isn't that the truth? Nick, did you have something? No?
No.
Okay.
I was just over here.
Just listening.
Just enjoying it and receiving it.
Okay. All right. Look then, verse 11 in Song of Solomon. Again, Connor's already mentioned it. Solomon had a vineyard at Baal Hamon. He let out the vineyard to keepers. Each one was to bring for its fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. So, what is Solomon expecting here? I mean, from his vineyard? Or what is Christ, therefore, expecting from his vineyard? He's expecting production. He's expecting a return. The vineyard should be producing. In Song of Solomon, in verse 12, the woman says, "My vineyard is my very own, is before me. You, Solomon, may have the 1,000, the keepers the fruit 200. So we have two senses here. In a literal sense, as Connor has said, the vineyard, when the woman talks about this, she's talking about her reproductive ability that she can produce. Okay? But even more so here, now, we're talking about more like an actual vineyard that is producing. Okay, let's say good wine, and Solomon is going to have 1,000 pieces of silver as his return, and it's so productive that the workers can have 200 pieces of silver also. So this is a productive vineyard. All right. Song of Solomon is an idealized, as you obviously know. I mean, picture is ideal. It's in a lot of symbolism and stuff, and I think really Christ in the church. But I mean, there's a lot of symbolism here. So, the vineyard then is the place of production, and Solomon, that is Christ, desires and is expecting production. So if the vineyard is us, the church, Christ very well is expecting us to produce, or to reproduce, if you like. I mean, so that could be evangelism, it could be discipleship, it could be the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience. How is it? Kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. That's production. That's spiritual production. Is the fruit of the Spirit being all of these things. And Christ very well expects us to produce. So this is kind of the background that I got on it from the song that Isaiah is quoting, not quoting from, but is riffing on in chapter 5, verse 1. David.
It's also, Jesus said, by the fruit.
What? What?
A good fruit, a good vine can produce bad fruit, bad vine can produce good fruit.
That's what Jesus did.
So the vineyard of Israel failed.
Yes.
The vineyard of the church does not fail.
Does not fail, although given our pessimistic nature, we may think so, but it doesn't.
Well, but we have an advantage.
Yeah, we got Christ.
Christ is the vine.
Yeah. That's the advantage, yeah. Yeah. All right. Everybody's on board here, I think. So let's go on. Then, and in verse 2, continue to talk about the vineyard. In Isaiah 5, he plants it, clears it out, builds a watchtower in the midst, makes wine, hews out a wine vat, and he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. The Hebrew is not quite so kind here on this. He looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded nasty things in Hebrew. Nasty stuff. So not even a small amount of production, but bad production. Yeah, bad production.
Worthless.
I'm sorry, but it's interesting because, you know, it's not like you're just completely forsaking some kind of religion. You know, just with nothing, you are embracing a bad religion. So you're still producing something, but it's nasty.
Yeah, it's not righteousness.
It's not producing. It's
It's producing bad. Exactly.
Which is worse.
Yeah.
Is worse. You know, so
Exactly.
This is a different image, but Paul talks about Gentiles being the wild olive branch,
Yes.
grafted onto the olive tree.
Yeah,
So wild olives, wild grapes.
possibly,
This
yes.
is like
Yes.
Gentile stuff, which
Yes.
would be nasty things.
But as we've been inserted back into the root, then we bear good
Again,
grapes.
when you get to Christ's olive grove,
Yeah, good grapes,
he's-
good olives.
He redeems the nasty things.
Yeah.
It's a little off the topic, but the watchtower and the vineyard, it reminds me in Song of Solomon, the place where his, I guess she was the wife of his youth, and she worried about how dark she was, because her brothers required her to be a watch person.
My
in the
brothers were
vineyard.
angry
She
with
was-
me.
Yeah, and I always thought it was kind of sweet.
Made me
Number
keepers
one,
of
that she
vineyard.
had to do her part in the family,
Yeah.
but number two, that she was just kind of worried whether being darker, made her not pretty.
Yeah, and also we could say this woman was not some kind of wallflower. I mean, she knew how to work.
Yeah.
She was a worker.
Yeah, which is, yeah.
It's good.
The
Yeah.
the Septuagint, when it talks about the wild grapes, the sour grapes,
Yes.
the Septuagint translates that thorn plants, thorn bushes.
Well.
So we're back to the curse of the
It's-
fall in Genesis.
Yeah.
It's all bad,
Well,
right? Yeah.
but also the burning bush was bramble.
Well,
And then-
but
and
that
then-
has,
There's a lot of symbolism.
that has a
Yeah.
good it has a good connotation though, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
that one.
well, again, it's redemption
Uh,
in the thorn crown,
Yeah.
or the crown of thorns.
all right.
Question.
Yes, Jim.
Could you say, relating to this, that faith produces works?
Yeah.
If we're abiding in Christ, faith produces good works.
Yes.
Whatsoever is not faith is sin.
Okay.
So could it be?
Good production, bad production. There you go. Yeah. All right, let's go on then. Let's see. Okay, we've talked about.
hard to sell those nasty grapes.
Pardon?
Hard to sell those nasty grapes.
I know it.
Well, and not to keep beating a dead horse, but you've also got, I think, is in Isaiah, the story of the thorn bush.
Maybe.
Or no, this was a prophecy by somebody, or a parable. Anyway, the thorn
Okay.
bush that elevates himself over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
trees.
yes, yes. I remember that.
All right.
Yeah. Well, let's go on then. Verse 7, the vineyard is the house of Israel. The vineyard of the Lord is the house of Israel. And the men of Judah his pleasant planting. He looked for justice, but behold bloodshed, and for righteousness, behold an outcry. So he's looking for righteousness in the church and justice in the church. So how horrible whatsoever that all of this adultery problem is plaguing us in the church, and pastor after pastor are falling in this, I mean, what a slam. And so this is where we are.
The church is made up of fallen people too.
I know. But we need to be producing good fruit.
Paul Jackson shared one thing last night, and he said he likes to play basketball. He was working out with the basketball team. It was Wednesday night, and then it was Wednesday. He was an interim pastor. He had to get to the church quickly. He didn't have time to really change. So he went to Wednesday night, and they didn't meet in the sanctuary. They met in the gym and for prayer. And he gets there, and he said the fact that he was wearing shorts just ate into half the crowd. So they're now gossiping with one another about this guy can't be here much longer.
It's possible.
He wore shorts to church.
Wisdom is vindicated
And
by
he
her
said the
children.
woman, he said consequently the woman that was kind of the head of that group, she was working on her fourth marriage.
Working on it.
All right, good production. So, yes. What if, where does it say so? I will break down it, verse 5, I will break down its wall and it shall be trampled down. So God now is actively, what should we say, against Israel. I mean, he's for Israel, but I mean, he's doing things here in Israel. What if its wall is broken down? Let's read a parallel passage and spiritualize it a little bit. In Proverbs chapter 24, verse 30. I like this passage, but I'm sure you're familiar with it. Proverbs 24. Let's see if I can find it here. Yes. Yes, this is
Again, 24.
24:30. It's a little story here,
Yeah.
which says, I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard. There we go again. By the vineyard of a man lacking sense. This vineyard shows up everywhere. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The grounds were covered with nettles, and the stone wall was broken down. There it is. The stone wall surrounding is broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, lowering the hands to rest. And your poverty will come in like a robber, and your want like a man that walks. Hmm? So when I
What?
that's it's more literally
That walks?
that walks, yeah.
Oh, well, it says like an armed robber.
I know. So usually, if I were teaching this in Proverbs, I would just say, well, stop hanging around at home with mom and dad. I mean, get up and get a job, man.
These guys
That's what.
sit around all the time, okay, God's going to take care of everything, don't worry about
Well,
it.
he's 3 jobs have been offered to you this week. But let's spiritualize a little bit here. And the vineyard then is Israel. And what if this wall, what if God, as he says in Isaiah, God pulls the wall down that's protecting Israel? What if, well, it's just a bad situation. I mean, I think, we can read this and just take counsel here.
Well, literally, the walls of Jerusalem fell.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
Babylonians overran the city.
they did. It was
The temple, too.
It was a bad scene, yeah, for sure. Okay, anybody else? We're not going so fast here, but
It seems to me that in a lot of these judgments that God levies against Israel, he's not so much inserting something into the story as he is just sort of leaving them to their own devices. The vineyard is naturally just going to fall apart unless it's well cultivated.
yes,
So God's judgment against Israel is just to let it happen.
let them go their own way.
Yeah, and it's
yes,
he's not stepping
Yes.
in and doing something to
yes,
them.
brother. Well, that would be God's judgment against a human being if he just lets us go our own way. I mean,
So if we take this translation from verse 2 as thorn plants,
yeah,
it makes it sort of changes how you read verse 6, because he says, I will make it a waste, it shall not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns will grow up.
Well,
that's what's going to happen.
that's just what's going to happen.
You don't cultivate it, that's what you get.
That's it. It'll grow back up.
But he does send men like Isaiah.
Well,
Sure. He sends a warning.
Well, Isaiah and Hosea and these men are preaching the
Isaiah
same
had
stuff.
an effect on Hezekiah.
Yeah.
When the city was under siege.
Indeed.
In his lifetime, and God laid waste to the Assyrian army.
Well, maybe this is an encouragement for us, and for Nick's not here, but to continue to preach and continue to teach and continue to talk about Christ with other folks. I mean,
And then,
what else can we do?
on the other hand, we've got God directly intervening and hardening the heart of Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Well, that's
He does what he wants to
He
do.
does. That's his business,
And he also
that's what he
hardens,
does.
I'm sorry.
It can get worse than just
Yeah.
him being absent.
Oh, it could.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it could. All right, let's continue then. Yes, verse 7. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed, and righteousness, and behold, an outcry. Woe to those who join house to house, who add field to field, until there is no more room. And you were made to dwell alone in the midst of the land. the Lord of hosts has sworn in my hearing, surely many houses shall be desolate, large and beautiful houses without inhabitant. For 10 acres of vineyard shall yield but one bath, whatever that measure is, and a homer of seed shall yield but an ephah. Again, this is just following on this judgment against the vineyard here. I mean, we've got the vineyard out here, but it's just not yielding very much. There's not much produce coming out of it. That's the sense of it. Verse 11, woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may run after strong drink, and tarry late into the evening as wine inflames them. They have lyre and harp, tambourine and flute and wine at their feasts, but they do not regard the deeds of the Lord or see the work of his hands. Yeah. Well, you know, it's like Nebuchadnezzar and many others. Look at the great empire that I've made for myself. And, you know, not acknowledging God's blessing here. 13. Therefore my people go into exile for lack of knowledge. Their honored men go hungry, and their multitude is parched with thirst. So therefore, exile is coming. And so Isaiah, you know, the prophets, they're just say, look, I mean, exile's coming. You know, get ready. And Isaiah, who was, Hosea, I believe, is a contemporary with Isaiah. Hosea is a prophet in the northern kingdom up in Israel, and Isaiah more so in Judah in the southern kingdom. But Hosea, if you'll remember that, or if it's on your mind, says the same thing. My people go into exile for lack of knowledge. Let's look at Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. If anybody has it, you can maybe read it.
Hosea what?
4, 1 through 6.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, please.
Listen to the word of the Lord, O sons of Israel, for the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land, because there is no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. There is swearing, deception, murder, stealing, and adultery.
Well.
They employ violence, so that bloodshed follows bloodshed. Therefore the land mourns, and everyone who lives in it languishes, along with the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky, and also the fish of the sea disappear. And number 4?
Yes, 4 through 6. Go ahead.
Oh, 4 through 6. Okay. Yet let no one find fault. Let no one offer reproof. For your people are like those who contend with the priest. So you will stumble by day, and the prophet also will stumble with you by night, and I will destroy your mother. Your people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. I also will reject you from being my priest, since you have forgotten the law of your God. I also will forget your children.
It's a famous passage in Hosea. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, this is Old Testament, but I would say we could just read this, I mean, in terms of the church. And so what would we say, or how would you comment on that our people are being destroyed for lack of knowledge?
But true knowledge comes from God. You know, so,
What else?
Well, knowing
true
him,
reality. So
knowing him, you could also say, understanding prophecy, not knowing the coming Messiah.
What else?
I would say his judgment is falling upon the land.
A famine of hearing the word of God.
Jesus has said at the end, there'll be those that say, Lord, we did this for you and did that for you. But he'll tell them, go away from me. I never knew you.
Wow.
Yeah.
What else?
well, see, in the New Testament here, the Pharisees and Sadducees, the religious leaders, they had all this great understanding of the Scripture, and based upon their interpretation of what the Old Testament is saying. And then along comes this crazy Jesus, and and they don't have the true knowledge. They can't. Their knowledge, even their knowledge of the Scriptures, is not true, because they misinterpret,
Well,
and the next thing you know, they're whitewashed sepulchres.
well, so how are our people dying for lack of knowledge
I
then?
know. Well, you know.
How?
Is the root word yet God?
Knowledge, probably. I didn't see it.
Because, you know, I've always associated that, you know, it's like he went in and he knew his wife, and then something wonderful happens, a baby is born, you know.
Well, I mean,
This
you can apply that to spiritual
Salvation
production. Yeah.
salvation experience, and something true grows from it.
Our churches they take modern culture, whatever culture they're in, and they try then to apply what God says to that particular culture. And so it adjusts the word of God.
They adjust
to
it.
fit the
Okay.
culture, whereas we should let
Okay.
let the Bible adjust our culture, not the other way around.
Okay. Well, if nobody's going to say it, I'm going to say it. I think that our people are dying because they're not reading the Bible enough.
Yeah.
True, yes, true interpretation, sure,
The word.
absolutely. But it's because we're biblically ignorant that, we don't know.
Faith comes by hearing.
Yeah,
hearing the word of God.
yeah.
This doesn't really answer your question, but there is an interesting thing in verse 6 where he says, I will reject you from being priest for me.
See?
There's nothing else in here that makes it directed at the Aaronic priests. So it is the church that is a nation of priests.
Indeed, and God will reject it. Well, I hope not all of us, but some of us from being priests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
False priests.
Yeah. All right, let's look at Hosea chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. I assume this is, well, let's see. Well, I don't know if this, well, we'll go ahead and read it. I don't know if this is the
What
right.
did you say? Yeah.
It's chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. I'll read it anyway. Come, let us return to the Lord. Well, that's good.
What
Chapter
book are we
6,
in?
Hosea.
Okay.
Come, let us return to the Lord. For he has torn us that he may heal us. He has struck us down and he will bind us up. So it's, in a way, Hosea is prophesying out in the future after all this disaster happens to Israel. He's warning them about it. He's, you're going into exile because of lack of knowledge. It's a problem, He has struck us down. He will bind us up. Look at this. After 2 days, he will revive us. And on the third day, he will raise us up. 3 days. Resurrection. That we may live before him. Let us press on to know the Lord. His going out is sure as the dawn. He will come to us as the showers, as the spring rains that water the earth. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? And what shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. Therefore I have hewn them by the prophets. The prophets are wielding their axes against Israel here.
Was it Ezra where they found the scriptures and then started reading it to the people?
It was in Judah in the temple, yeah.
Tore their
Yeah.
It was Josiah.
Because they hadn't heard it.
Yeah.
Their generation. It was Ezra, right?
It was
under
Judah.
Josiah.
It was in Jerusalem.
Josiah.
In the books, why not?
That was under King Josiah, who was like the last.
The book of the law. Book of the
The
law.
last good.
Yeah. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love, or really mercy, and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. So here's how we're going astray, and it's what you've said, and what I've said. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Okay, He desires us to be merciful toward our enemies, be living the life of Christ. Yes. And He desires knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. And it seems to me we're just not reading the Bible enough. That's my sermon for today.
Well, twice Jesus invokes that verse and says, explain to me what this means.
I desire
mercy
mercy.
and not sacrifice.
Yeah.
And he leaves out the end, the second phrase.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's people that this is how they would describe, this guy knows just enough of the Bible to make himself
Well.
really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to be Bible scholars here. I'm just arguing just for reading it. Just read it. Just read it, and God will speak to you. You know.
That's right.
Huh?
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Right on.
I agree. I agree that I'm right. Okay. Isaiah chapter 5 again, and we are. Let's see here. We just finished verse 13. And, okay, I'm going to go ahead and, I don't really have much. Ooh, let's see here. Man, I've just about done what I had for today. I don't really have much on this. It's a long chapter. I don't have much. We'll go ahead and read it. I have a couple of things, and then I'll let you comment on the reading here. I don't have too much more. Verse. Let's see where we were. 13.
Isaiah
Let's go to
5.
14. Yeah, Isaiah 5:14. Well, we go back to 13. Therefore my people go into exile for lack of knowledge. Their honored men go hungry, and their multitude is parched with thirst. Therefore Sheol has enlarged its appetite and opened its mouth beyond measure. And the nobility of Jerusalem and her multitude will go down, her revelers, and he who exalts in her. Man is humbled, and each one is brought low, and the eyes of the haughty are brought low. But the Lord of hosts is exalted in justice, and the holy God shows himself holy in righteousness. Then shall the lambs graze as in their pasture, and no man shall eat among the ruins of the rich. Wow. Amazing. Think about the scene there, you know. I mean, all these elegant houses are heaps of rubble, and people are just scratching around in there, building a fire and cooking a hot dog or something like that. Woe to those who draw iniquity with cords of falsehood and draw sin as with cart ropes, who say, let him be quick, let him speed his work, that we may see it. Let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw near, and let it come, that we may know it. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Check out the day in which we are living. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil.
That's our culture right now.
Oh, that's our national culture, calling evil good and good evil.
Well, that's what Russia's saying.
Not only Russia, it's true. I say it
The whole
too.
situation over there. Just a big
Yeah,
lies.
America too.
Yeah.
Just this week, a
America
high school
again.
volleyball player, refused to go in because there was a guy who said he's a woman,
Yeah,
and he
that's
came
crazy.
in to watch them undress.
That's
She
crazy.
refused to let him do it. They expelled her from school. She has to find another school, and then told her father, who came to her defense, that you can never walk foot on this campus again.
I would say we're calling evil good and good
That's
evil.
insane.
It's sure, it's totally insane.
This goes back to the thing about Baal entering the Jewish language, English language, or Israeli language. You control the language.
Yes.
You
Yes.
control the culture.
Good point. If you control the language, you control the culture. Yeah, very good. Well, here we are, folks. Verse 21. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and shrewd in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine and valiant men in mixing strong drink, who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of his right. Therefore, as the tongue of fire devours the stubble, and as dry grass sinks down in the flame, so their root will be as rottenness, and their blossom go up like the dust. For they have rejected the law of the Lord of hosts, and have despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore the anger of the Lord was kindled against his people, and he stretched out his hand against them and struck them, and the mountains quaked, and their corpses were as refuse in the midst of the streets. Wow. For all this his anger has not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. He will raise a signal for the nations afar off, and whistle for them from the ends of the earth, and behold, quickly, speedily they come. None is weary, none stumbles, none slumbers or sleeps, not a waistband is loose, not a sandal broken. Their arrows are sharp, all their bows are bent. Their horses' hoofs seem like flint, and their wheels like the whirlwind. Their roaring is like a lion. Like young lions they roar. They growl and seize their prey. They carry it off, and none can rescue. They will growl over it on that day, like the growling of the sea. And if one looks to the land, behold darkness and distress, and the light is darkened by the clouds. Well, it's pretty amazing, and everything is here, and you can say a comment on these. I only have really one thing with two verses, in verse 19 and verse 26. In verse 19 it says, woe to those who say, let him be quick, let him speed his work. And verse 26 says, he will raise a signal for the nations, a far-off whistle for them from the ends of the earth, and behold, quickly, speedily they come. I'm going to say that this is I don't know what you want to call it. It's a prologue to Isaiah naming his son. It's the name of Isaiah's son. We'll get to it here shortly, some of the next chapters. His son's name is the outstanding name of Maher Shalal Hashbaz.
Oh, yeah.
Which means the spoil speeds and the prey hastens. So it's a theme here in Isaiah. The prey hastens. In other words, those that will spoil Israel, they're hastening. They're coming. And that was the name of his son. The spoil speeds and the prey hastens. So it's kind of a prophetic theme here in Isaiah 5, and then it goes on. Do you remember the chapter that's in where he names his son? Maybe chapter 9? Or no, I don't remember. It's pretty soon. We'll read it pretty soon here, some of these next few chapters.
Earlier, was it where he said, I desire mercy and not sacrifice?
Yes.
And what was the other? He also, not burnt offerings, but...
knowledge of God and not burn.
Knowledge of God.
I've always deeply appreciated the Lord, having that in the Bible, because to me that's one of those things that a red flag of authenticity, truth.
All right.
Because if some man was just making this stuff up, it's all about having a lot of gods and power and ego. But that's a very, to me, that's a very non-ego. That's love. So
beautiful.
That's always gotten my attention.
That's wonderful. Jim, your friends are here.
Yes. One comment.
Yes.
Not only do they not read the Bible, they despise the Word of God.
Oh, certainly.
They despise.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And the people that do all these things, they despise.
Oh, certainly.
Well, when Jim Jones took over, did that church out in San Francisco, and then they moved them down to South America, where they all took poison and died. Basically, 700,000 people. At one point, I was just reading about him. At one point, he was in the church and he held up a Bible like this. He says, "Is this what y'all believe in?" He threw it to the floor and stomped on it and said, "Don't believe this, believe me." And they all got up and started cheering.
I never
Well,
heard
you remember,
that.
Satan said that he said, did God really say?
Yeah.
That's
You know,
it.
And,
That's the thing.
Yeah, he could-
I have a friend, he went to Lambert, and first day of like New Testament or something like that, the professor, and I won't name him, heaved the Bible to the back of the room, and my friend picked it up, wouldn't give it back to him.
Good for him.
Got in trouble over it.
Good for him. Good for him.
Good for him. Does anyone have anything else? I just read this last long section here. I didn't have anything but that one comment. It is what it is. But so, thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your work.
Thanks. And we will be in the amazing chapter 6 next week.
That's a good chapter.